The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Welcome into another episode of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Haley Sutton and Jess Navarre is with you, your normal host, and we are so excited to have Kristi Scales hopping in with us, filling in for Aisha. She's battling through some illness, so we wish her well, but we are also excited to have Kristi on the show. What's up, Kristi?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Too bad there's nothing to talk about this week.
Oh, right.
Oh,
it's been such a slow week, you know?
Yeah, there are certain years. I mean, obviously you have free agency and there are comings and goings and the roster changes so much every year, but the caliber of player, in particular this week, it feels like you're kind of flipping a new page.
Yeah.
And maybe not every year you're flipping a page, but this may be starting a new chapter.
Yep. Absolutely. Obviously, you are alluding to the fact that Ezekiel Elliott is no longer a Cowboy. On Wednesday, the Cowboys and Zeke mutually parted ways. 7 seasons with the organization, and he leaves the team finishing third all-time in rushing carries, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. So this is obviously a significant blow for so many reasons. But I really think that when I think about Zeke, the first thing that comes to mind is just like the emotional connection that he had to the locker room, as well as anyone who came into the locker room. He was one of the first guys to welcome me in and make me feel like a part of this team. So that part of it's challenging, but obviously I think when you look at the production ever since he got that big contract a few years ago, there's obviously been a decline. So it'll definitely be weird, to say the least, to start training camp and OTAs without him in that locker room.
Yeah, he's just such a presence. He's just such a force when you're talking to him, and even when you're not, when you're just in the locker room and you know when Zeke is in there, you know? And I think for a lot of people, he is that generational player. I've seen a lot of comparisons to, oh, well, you should have been around when Emmitt Smith was gone. And, you know, to some younger generations, this is their Emmitt Smith. This is their equivalent to that player for them. And, you know, I have a friend back home who even named her son after Zeke. So he is that player for a lot. He's a keystone staple for the Cowboys, and he has been for the last 7 seasons. So it stings, and it's definitely one of those really hard business moments that, you know, is part of the NFL. But, you know, the emotional connection and just all the memories are really hard to say goodbye to officially.
Yeah, and Babe Laufenberg, my colleague on Cowboys Radio, our Cowboys Radio analyst, I'll use his analogy, and you say how hard it is in this business, and sometimes it's just brutal when these business decisions have to be made when Emmitt Smith can't even finish his career as a Dallas Cowboy. But Babe says you don't get gold watches in this league. There are very few players that are able to leave, retire as Dallas Cowboys, and especially now in the era of free agency and things like that. But it's an ignominious end to what really was a great career. And man, if he just could have stayed healthy for a couple more years, if he could have kept that burst, right, that we saw the first few seasons, if he hadn't had to serve that suspension, he probably would have led the league in rushing that season as well. So, but to finish in 7 years over 10,000 scrimmage yards, it's fabulous. But to your point of what he meant to the locker room, it's not just the spirit, and he was like the fun kid brother that came in. He brought a lot of fun and spirit, but on the field he did the dirty work.
Yep.
He and I don't just mean picking up blitzing linebackers or blitzing safeties. Coach Garrett always said that he was the best player he saw playing off the ball, and that was coming out of college. So. I'm going to miss him, and I tell you, the media is going to miss him.
Yeah.
Because he was the first person,
always,
whether it was a win or a loss, when they opened the locker room after the game, all of the reporters made a beeline to Zeke's locker because he would speak after every game. And believe me, especially after some tough losses, there are players that do not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that stands out to me is the Green Bay game. He spoke after that one, as well as the Jacksonville game too. So just his humbleness, his willingness to face the music, good or bad. I love that you pointed that out, Kristi. And it's interesting too when you think about how difficult this decision was for the franchise, because a couple weeks ago at the Combine, Jerry Jones told us he wanted to find a way to have both him and Tony Pollard on the roster. It just had to work out from a financial standpoint. I want to get into Jerry Jones's statement that he put out yesterday about Zeke. It's pretty long, so I'm not going to read it. I read the whole thing. I did tweet out kind of some pieces of it, but basically, it starts out by saying, quote, Zeke's impact and influence is seared into the Cowboys franchise in a very special and indelible. Indelible. Thank you.
No, you got it right.
I've never seen that
you
word
nailed
before.
that.
Yeah, you were right.
Indelible.
He has been a
day.
consummate professional and leader that set a tone in our locker room, on the practice field, and in the huddle. He finished it basically by saying, for me personally, for the franchise, for the players, we will always have a special place and love for Zeke and what he means to our Cowboys family, both as a person and as a player. That will never change. And so reports were coming out yesterday saying, Jerry Jones basically had like a final conversation with him before the decision was officially made. And to me, that's how you know that this was a really difficult decision. That's how you know the impact of Zeke will be felt for so long, because you even have the owner basically saying, all right, is there anything we can do?
Yeah.
And so I will obviously be rooting for him as he probably lands on another team somewhere. I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that he did, because Kristi, you mentioned a couple of his highlights. Led the league in back-to-back years to start. Sorry, my notes are all over the place.
Yeah, his first two seasons,
his first
2016, 2017.
Thank you. Yeah, He had 7 100-yard games in those, third most by a rookie in NFL history. He did serve that suspension in 2017. And that, to me, too, kind of encompassed what you were getting out of Zeke when you saw the suspension and how resilient, to use the word of the year last year, he was battling through that, in and out of courtrooms and in and out of practice. But then you kind of saw a steady decline once he got that contract extension. This year he had a career low in rushing yards, but he did score 12 touchdowns. So to your point, Kristi, definitely being an impact on this team. I guess where I lean in all of this is thinking, how is the team going to replace him? Obviously there's names floating around in free agency. This is also a really good year for the draft.
Yep.
But I kind of just want to pick y'all's brains a little bit. What do you think this team loses by losing Ezekiel Elliott on the football field, and how do you replace that?
I think something important to note, too, that's so respectable about Zeke is that when you have somebody on the come up like Tony Pollard has been, it's so easy to get caught up in human emotions of, I don't want to help that person. That's, that could be my replacement. Yeah, and sometimes you can't help that. If it's your body, you cannot help that. And that is just the nature of that running back position. And Zeke never once acted that way towards Tony Pollard. I mean, TP's been so vocal about how helpful Zeke has been just throughout this entire time. And I just love that for Zeke, because again, it's so selfless, and we can't say enough good things about him there. But I think in terms of, not necessarily what's missing on the field, it's going to be interesting to officially see Tony Pollard step into that running back one role and how he becomes that leader, because they're two very different personalities, Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. So how he steps into that role and, say maybe there's a younger guy that comes in to help fulfill that 1-2 punch, if that's, what they're still going to go with the Mike McCarthy play calling. But to see him become that leader and fill in that role, the leadership role for TP with, whoever he's going to work with, or whether it's Malik Davis or whatever the situation ends up being. But I think what you miss with Zeke is the blocking more than anything else, because he was such a firm wall for Dak Prescott. Like, no one's getting to Dak if Zeke has a say in it, and that's just what it was. So to me, that's a sure thing that you are definitely losing, is his blocking ability, because it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and the blocking, if you say, oh, well, we'll bring in a young guy, we'll draft somebody, well, that's usually the hardest and last thing that these guys coming out of college pick up is it's not just the willingness to stick your nose in there and help pick up a blitz, to help in pass protection, it's recognizing it. Yeah. So that's an issue there. I think from the what you're going to miss also, and Jess and Aisha, when we would talk about Zeke during the year, we would talk about what we're expecting in games. So the Cowboy run game is like boxing, where you have jab, 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 and then the haymaker comes. Well, Zeke was your jab.
Yeah.
And then TP would
that.
come in and then hit the big play. Zeke just didn't have the wheel. He didn't have that burst anymore with the knee issues and stuff like that, that if he got through to the second level, that he'd take off. So what would be a 60-yard gain in his first couple years, ends up being 16 or something. Everybody's like, Zeke's not what he used to be. Well, he wasn't, because he was hurting a lot more than he was letting on, and that people really knew about. But anyway, back to Jess's point of, you've got TP in the role here, and Pollard can still be your haymaker, but who's going to be the jab?
Yeah.
And who's going to set it up? So remains to be seen. Obviously, it'll be addressed in the draft, and there's still going to be a lot of moves coming in free agency. But it does take that person, not just with the skill set and the body type to be able to absorb that kind of stuff if you're the one that's the jab, but also that selfless attitude when you're going to be the one. It's like it was a joke back in the 90s with the triplets, where Michael Irvin, Hall of Fame career, and put up numbers and everything, but Emmett got all the touchdowns because Michael would make the catch and get tackled at the 2-yard line, and then Emmett would carry it in. And so anyway, but that's kind of how Zeke was. Or you could also say Zeke did get a lot of his touchdowns this year with the short yardage. He was still very effective with that, and very effective on converting this past year, the 3rd and 1 and fourth and shorts,
especially in the red zone more than anything else, and that's where it was the most productive, right? So he's maybe not making those 60-yard bursts like he used to, but he was productive in the red zone, and he was your I can count on that guy even for that when he was having a decline. That's hard to do.
And just some players. And it's just like everyone in life. Think of your friends and your family, and some people pay attention to details, and some just kind of, through life as it went on. Zeke, for as fun-loving as he was, and that was kind of the aura that he put off, was attention to details, and it's like small little things. So my favorite thing that happened last year at training camp with Zeke was it's early in practice, and his hair was getting kind of long, and when the guys pull it up, what is it, like a man bun that they pull it up in? And he's trying to get his hair under his helmet. But anyway, and I'm just standing there on the sideline, and my hair's pulled up in a ponytail under a hat. And he's like, do you have an extra hair? I'm like, no. So I just took mine and put it, gave it. So he pulls his hair up, and I'm like, oh, well, that's the last I see of that thing. And then he actually had a press conference later that afternoon, and he starts to go to the podium, and then he sees me, comes over and delivered not the ratty hair clip that was all sweaty and stuff, but he had gone and got new ones and handed me a pack of new hair clip pony.
That's
I love
so
that.
sweet.
Yeah.
It's very Zeke.
And I've been dealing with this. We were talking a little bit before the show just on, the nonsense that has been social media with all of the moves, and not just with this team, just like with players in general. I kind of did a finger wag at a guy yesterday for calling Noah Brown a bum for the season that he had. And, I love hearing stories like that, because it's so easy for us to sit here and say, oh, Ezekiel Elliott had a career low in all things rushing this season, right? But you don't hear that side, the guy who is literally at practice and, remembers to give you a pack of ponytails back, or, the guy who holds the door open for you, or who does a second interview even though he's already spoken to people in the locker room because he knows that it's important for you to get that content. I think that's just such an important facet of his game. And then back to your point, Jess, the Cowboys relied on him in the red zone. And I saw someone tweet yesterday, all of his touchdowns, and I think 70% of them were all 1-yarders into the end zone. And I'm like, are we really complaining about touchdowns?
How you got a touchdown?
Are we really complaining
and
about...
by the way, that's the hardest yard to get.
Right. You've got a line, a wall of 300-plus pound men that you have to get through.
And not to mention he's doing that hurt.
Yeah.
Come
so
on.
it's incredible. I love hearing these stories. I actually spoke to a group of girls at ASU yesterday, and one of the things they asked was that, how do you deal with, what people are saying to you on social media about you, or what they're saying about the players. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you, even going back to Noah Brown, you recognize and you see the work that these guys are doing, behind the scenes a little bit. We get that privilege of having that access. And and getting to know these guys better. And it's always so mind-blowing to me, the excuses that people will make to, discredit what these men have sacrificed, what these men have given, so that your football team can be successful. So yes, Ezekiel Elliott, most of his touchdowns were 1-yard runs into the end zone this year, but they were 6 and sometimes 7 points on the board. So
Yep. We're complaining about points. Apparently now, yeah. It's always amazing to me, the social media, I guess, response to these type of situations, because, most of what I was seeing was pretty positive yesterday, filled with stories like Kristi was just saying, with different things that Zeke had done for reporters here, or just fans that he's met and impacts that he's made. But then, of course, you have the one bad apple that's going in the comments and, oh, I'm glad. Okay. I'm great for you. Like, why do you have to put that out there? You don't have to tweet everything, everybody. Like, if there's a thought in your mind, you don't have to put it out there.
Yeah, pretend that your mom reads Twitter.
Yeah,
okay?
And something that
control yourself
really got me yesterday was I saw a tweet talking about Zeke's work off the field and how he helped the Salvation Army. Really good tweet. And the thing about Twitter is if you retweet something, you're going to get the notification of people responding at that point. Somebody went
Unless
back.
you have your Twitter notifications turned off, which, by the way, the best thing for your mental health.
Yeah, I need to do that. And somebody said, well, stats are what gets him paid, none of that stuff. And what people don't realize is that word spreads very, very quickly in this business. So, yeah, you know what? Maybe the stats are what gets him paid, but also those off-the-field things are very attractive to other teams as well, because that's hard to find in a guy like Zeke.
Yeah, and one last thing, Zeke multiple times won the Good Guy Award, which there's no trophy. And we keep saying we need to put $5 in on a Whataburger gift certificate. The reporters haven't done that yet.
Poor J-Ron got a water bottle bath this year.
So the Good Guy Award is voted upon at the end of the season by the local media, the beat folks who are in the locker room every day talking to the players. And so it goes to the player who's the most cooperative, makes himself available, provides insight and things like that. So previous winners, Dak, Jason Witten, guys like Marcus Spears. You mentioned J-Ron Kearse, who won this year, but Zeke was a multiple time winner. So, and I'm really interested to think about what it's going to be like at training camp this summer, because Zeke was the one that came out, and before Zeke, it was Dez. And I'm talking about fan reaction and setting the atmosphere and kind of the fun thing and who gets the crowd going the most. Now, it might be Kevontae Turpin coming up this coming July and August when we go back to Oxnard. But Zeke was that guy. He kind of took that over from Des Bryant, but I'll be real interested to see who that one is that gets the fans juiced up the most.
It is certainly going to be different, to say the least. I am blessed and thankful that I got my first year being his last year here at the organization, kind of set the bar, so to speak, for what to expect for these new guys coming in. So we're going to take our first break, but I want you girlies to think about your favorite Ezekiel Elliott moment. I know you just shared that story, but if you have something else, we'll come back to it and we'll wrap up the show with our favorite Ezekiel Elliott moment. Obviously, though, this is not the only free agency move the Cowboys have made. After a slow start, things picked up yesterday and the day before. We're going to talk about some of the new additions, as well as we say farewell to some of the players from last year's roster here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that sixth ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
To Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Haley Sutton, Jess Navarez, and Kristi Scales. We're going to get into some free agency moves for the Dallas Cowboys, but first let's go over to Jess.
Register now for the 2023 Dallas Cowboys Youth Camps presented by Invisalign. Athletes ages 6 to 16 are invited to learn the best this summer at AT&T Stadium or Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. Football camps are led by former NFL players, and cheer camps are taught by current Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Save $25 when you sign up for camp by May 12th, so visit dallascowboys.com/camps to get that done.
We just had our spring break one yesterday out at the stadium, and it was fantastic. We had people that came, Iowa City, Iowa, folks from Arizona, driving in from Amarillo, Sheriff of Midland County brought his grandsons. David brought his grandson. So it was a lot of fun. But this summer it's going to be incredible.
Packed. Yeah.
So,
I was at you were there too, but I was at the flag football, the girls flag football event they had a couple of weeks ago, and even that was cool just to see, like how flag football in Texas has grown and really all over the country. So get out to those camps, take your kids to camp. We all know you want them out of the house, so there's no better place to put them than Cowboys camp. Let's get into some free agency, because I know that the narrative surrounding the Cowboys when it comes to free agency is that nothing ever gets done. And that first day kind of felt that way. Team was maybe sussing out some of the options, looking at what's available, trying to get the cap where it needed to be. And the following day, they made some moves. They have worked out deals with Donovan Wilson, which, hallelujah. Can we just get a round of applause for Donovan Wilson coming back? Leighton Vander Esch also returns. Thank you, Jazzy. Leighton Vander Esch also returning. There are a couple of guys who have moved out, but I want to focus right now on Donovan Wilson and Leighton Vander Esch. Jess, these are two people that you and I both have been very high when it comes to keeping them on the team for many reasons. Continuity, knowing the game plan, working under Dan Quinn, keeping certain position groups together, and I think all of those things really encompass what these guys can do. Let's start with Donovan Wilson. He just got a 3-year, $24 million paycheck, 13.5 of that guaranteed. I had the chance to talk to him literally seconds after he signed that paperwork, which was
I love that for you.
So
because
cool.
You've been so high on Dono.
Yeah.
I love that for you.
Yeah, he had his little baby, Junior. He told us that in 22 years we'll see Junior in a Cowboys uniform, so I'm going to hold him to that. But even more impressive, we know Donovan Wilson is a man of very few words. But you could just sense his excitement after, working that deal out. And I know it was important to not only him, but it was important to J-Ron and to Malik to keep that core group together. You keep your leadership, you keep your veterans together, the leaders of the secondary, especially when you have so many young guys, Deron Bland and whoever else. This cornerback draft class is stacked. And so you keep that core group together while also helping the next generation stick together. But why do you guys think it was so important for this organization to get a deal done with Donovan Wilson?
I think first and foremost, you're seeing the Dan Quinn effect, because things are getting done, yes, but also Dan Quinn gives these guys a reason to want to stay and maybe work something out a little bit longer than they would have had he not been here. I mean, to work under Dan Quinn and see the growth that all of these guys have really had the last couple of seasons, Dono, LVE, just perfect examples of the growth that when they're working with, DQ, it is insane. So to know that you're going to stay somewhere and get better, but having Donovan Wilson, that's great. That just solidifies that your safety group is going to continue to get better. And that was something that we had talked about going from 2021 to 2022 was, Dan Quinn's defense was successful 2021. How can he continue to piggyback off of that 2022? We saw the success. We saw all of the, things that the defense was able to do. But I think somebody like Dono just gives you hope that is a position you do not have to worry about. You don't have to worry about the safety group. And then LVE, another one, but we'll get into that in a second. But that was so exciting. That was, I heard a little Alleluia chorus when I woke up to that.
Yeah. I think the reason why it's so important to keep Donovan Wilson is because he is a playmaker on defense.
Right.
We think of
definition.
playmakers as offense. Who are your playmakers on offense? Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb. And Donovan Wilson, he gets there when he blitzes. He's always around the ball. So he's your thumper, your physical enforcer there. He can play down if he needs to. So it's his versatility. But some players just have a knack for the ball, a nose for the ball, and he's one of them. And so I know that the Cowboys did a good job of creating takeaways the last couple years, but there was a year where Donovan Wilson was about it that we had. He was the lone guy, and that when you're able to surround him with more guys, when Jaron Kearse comes in and when Trayvon Diggs starts to take off. I know he didn't have as many interceptions this year as last year, but now you've got multiple playmakers on defense. But I agree with you ladies wholeheartedly. When going into this offseason, it's like we have to keep Donovan Wilson. Do not lose him. And honestly, he was more affordable than I thought he would be.
Yeah,
a lot more affordable than I thought he would
especially when I think if he shopped around a little bit, he could have got more money. But again, I think that just goes to show how important it was for him to stay in a place where he felt comfortable, staying in a place where he's surrounded by his boys.
Yeah, and no state income tax. So there are some. No, I mean seriously,
It's important. It is important.
And even places people don't think about things like this, but when you play in Denver, when you play in New York as a visitor, you are taxed at that level for that game.
It's insane.
So imagine if you had 9 games or your preseason games too. So I know that it's like, it's just a game or it's just 8 times. Well, it adds up.
Yeah.
So there really are a lot of advantages that you have. The teams that are located in, states that don't have state taxes. So, he can, make a little bit of that money back.
It's so wild that you bring that up. I was looking at Jamal Williams because he's one of my favorite running backs just in general, and he just went to the Saints. But somebody had broken down his contract prior to his move to New Orleans, and it broke down the state taxes. And when you hear these guys and, they make $3 million, right? That's a dream for most of us to make that kind of money, right? But then when you look at the taxes and the amount of that is just diminished based on that, it's still a lot of money. I'm not trying to shortchange that, but when you, again, going back to Ezekiel Elliott, when you think about what you're putting on the line, you're risking your body for the greater good, for those 7 points on the 1-yard rushes in the end zone. And then you look at what comes out of that just from taxes, it's insane.
Your paycheck is less for that game. If you're a Cowboy and you're playing in one of those states, then your paycheck for that game is going to be less than if you played at home.
Yeah.
Something that I like looking at when it comes to Dono is how his stats have gradually improved. And then 2021, obviously, he had injury, so there's a bit of a drop there for obvious reasons. But back in 2020, you had a little baby tiny glimpse of what you were going to get from Dono with 3.5 sacks. He had a combined total tackles of 71. And then obviously 2021, he only played 9 games, so he had 29 combined total tackles, no sacks. Then you go into 2022.
Career
101 combined total tackles, 7 of which were tackles for loss. And then he had 5 sacks.
Yeah, he paid rent in the box.
This many. 5.
He paid rent.
he didn't pay rent. He bought land. He bought land and he said, I'm staying here. I'm not leaving.
I'd like to say one more thing about Donovan Wilson, and that is, in the off season, this is kind of the lull. People think it's the lull for the players, but hey, they're already here. Yeah, they're already working. But the Cowboys' strength and conditioning coaches and Coach McCarthy, they have the off-season conditioning winners, right? They have the award winners for that. And then the one who is like the overall champion of the off-season, my words, not Coach McCarthy's, but the one, they present the Golden Whistle. And we've talked about it before on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, but it was back towards the beginning of the 2022 season. But the Golden Whistle Award for last year went to Donovan Wilson. And when I say the award, it literally is it's a gold whistle, and your name is inscribed on it. and it's for all of your hard work in the off season, and not just the metrics of how they measure what you do, but your attitude, your attendance, leadership, things like that. And it's Coach McCarthy in conjunction with the strength and conditioning coaches that make that decision, and Donovan Wilson won it last year. So that's the kind of person that we're keeping around, the guy who's one of the hardest workers in the offseason and is setting the example for everybody else.
I think you can put Leighton Vander Esch in that same category as well when you think about what he's been through from an injury standpoint. We've talked about it a lot too. The trajectory that he was on last year was very similar to that rookie season until he
looking at it right now, I'm like,
picked up that stinger injury. But the thing that stands out to me about Leighton Vander Esch, kind of similar to Dono, is that he was so adamant about staying with this organization. And you teased to it earlier, Jess. He literally said it's because of Dan Quinn. Like he said, he believes in me. I want to play for that guy. I want to play for Mike. And so I think with Leighton Vander Esch, you're getting your quarterback of the defense back. And, I'm hoping that he can stay healthy and continue to be that impact guy. I think he really helped with the run defense, with the addition of Jonathan Hankins coming in, another free agent who I would also like to see come back. But Leighton Vander Esch, 2 years, $11 million. As I mentioned, the quarterback of the defense, but just another good guy to have on that side of the ball.
And were you surprised by those numbers as well?
A little.
That was a little more affordable than I thought, too.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think, again, it just goes to wanting to stay here in Dallas. That's what they could offer. And I think for him, he told Brad and I on Cowboys Hour, I really, really, really don't want to leave Dallas. And so I also thought that, but I just assumed that was just probably the best deal that they could come to without him leaving. But again, I think, he maybe could have gotten a little more somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, it's always one of those what-if situations. I mean, I look at these numbers, and they're so comparable to his 2018 season. The only difference that you really see is back in 2018, he had more tackles alone instead of assisted tackles. So what you see here is more of a mix of the two in last season, is he has his solo tackles and then he has the assists. So one of those guys that sets other people up for success, and I think that's so important with LVE. And I think you're just starting to see him you're starting to see him get hot. So I can't even imagine what you're going to see from LVE, given, he stays healthy and all is well with that. But I'd also just like to point out, you're welcome, everybody. I think it was really our sales pitches on Girls Talk Boys Talk.
That's fair. Who did Aisha pitch?
Jonathan Hankins. So we are 2 for 3 so far.
Okay.
Let's cross our fingers, everybody, that we go 3 for 3, because I'm just saying, we're doing pretty good so far.
Yeah. So just as a refresher, and I don't know if you heard this segment either, Kristi, our last regular season episode of Girls Talk Boys Talk, I challenged the girls to do a sales pitch to Jerry Jones. If you could keep any free agent that's on that list, who would it be and why? Jess pitched Leighton Vander Esch. I pitched Donovan Wilson. Aisha pitched Jonathan Hankins. So as Jess mentioned, we are 2 for 3. Hopefully we will see something get done along those lines with Hankins. If not, again, the draft is, I think, quietly littered with some really talented guys on both offense and defense who can come in. I want to talk Stephon Gilmore, but let's go ahead and take our last break. When we come back, we're going to talk Stephon Gilmore, what he brings to this already stacked secondary here in Dallas. And we'll talk a little bit about what the rest of the division is doing. That's coming up on our final block of Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic angel food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to our final segment of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Let's go to Jess.
All right. Well, this is how we country. Country music's Party of the Year is coming to the Ford Center at the Start in Frisco. The Academy of Country Music Awards are always bringing you country music's brightest stars together under one roof, and no one does country like Texas. Witness history on May 11th. Limited tickets remain, so get yours at SeatGeek.com.
I love always hearing that. Like, this is how we country, because I don't know why that always makes me chuckle, but
I just love it.
This is how we country.
It's very yeehaw,
okay.
you know?
Yeah, it is very yeehaw.
We're going to put Jess on the red carpet there. So
I would love that. I love country music. I would be all about that. I will make sure this is how we country. I will make it very yeehaw.
Well, I hope Stephon Gilmore also loves to country, because he is joining the Cowboys for his final year of his contract. We acquired him via trade for a compensatory 5th-round pick in this year's draft. He is joining a stacked secondary, as we talked about earlier. Trayvon Diggs, his opposite. You've also got that safety room, the three-headed monster. Deron Bland mixing in there as well. You've also got an Israel Mukuamu and a Nashawn Wright. So a lot of guys really stepping into that role. I'm not worried about the defense at all. I would love for the offense to be addressed next in free agency. But talking about Stephon Gilmore, when he spoke with our Patrick Walker yesterday, he said he has always wanted to be a Cowboy. This has been a dream of his, so we are excited to have him on the roster this year. But he brings a lot of experience, 29 interceptions in 11 seasons. He's been with the Bills, won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. He played with the Panthers and, of course, the Colts last year. Very similar to Dono as well in having a nose for finding the ball, as I mentioned, with those interceptions, as well as a ton of pass breakup. So I think besides veteran experience, you also bring veteran leadership to a group that is really starting to mesh and become, a huge part of the identity of that defense.
Yeah, and I think all you need to know about Gilmore is after the Cowboys played the Colts and they go out for the jersey swap, and you have Micah and Trayvon competing over who's going to get Gilmore's jersey.
Do we know who got it?
I'm not sure. We're gonna
That's
have
a good
to ask.
question.
Yeah,
we need some investigative journalism.
Micah? Okay.
Micah. Okay, so Micah got it. So, but I think that's. That's a sweet, funny story, but it shows.
It tells you something.
Yeah,
he's a baller.
He's a baller. He's already respected by his peers and his new teammates. So I think that says a lot about him. Yeah. And it's going to be. I don't want to jump ahead to NFC East stuff, but with the guy like Slay from
who is, I guess, going back to the Eagles.
Allegedly.
Yeah, they were going to let him go, and now he's going to go back. So
it's very toxic,
actually. Here's the thing. You can never have enough good cornerbacks.
You can't.
Look at
we
what happened last year.
Look
at what happened last year. And Jordan Lewis working back from injury.
Yeah.
You hope that he, can come back and maybe share that slot position with Deron Bland or be a big contributor. I love Jordan Lewis.
I do too.
And then,
so nice.
Going to be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Brown's career as he goes forward, because he cost him, that injury cost him a lot of money with going into his free agency season. But I'm really excited about Gilmore, and he on one side, Diggs on the other, and presumably Bland there playing in the slot. Yeah.
I also want to throw out, because a lot of, again, social media is so toxic sometimes, but a lot of people were concerned about his age and his productivity in that sense. You're going to love this. When you look at his stats, you go from 2012, which is his rookie season. He had 61 combined total tackles, 52 of which were solo tackles. You want to compare stats. He had 66 combined total tackles, which is the best of his 11 seasons so far. Last season, 53 of which were solo tackles, 13 of which were assists. So, you want to, if you want to say somebody is, not maybe as young and healthy, go look at how he plays, because it is very opposite of that. I mean, he's going to bring a big threat to the secondary for
Yeah,
sure.
he's a 5-time Pro Bowler, Defensive Player of the Year. Like, we don't need to get into like what he can contribute. I think for me, the biggest thing that stands out is what Kristi said: the fact that the players are fighting over his jersey in a game where they had a tremendous fourth quarter, and they still went over to Stephon Gilmore trying to get his jersey. You saw the reaction on social media with a lot of these guys whenever the signing was announced. So I think the respect speaks for itself. And again, I just think that this is going to be such an addition to a position to where, like, late in the season, that was really a concern. So you can never have too many good players, and you can never have too many good veteran players.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is the Cowboys are not tied to a long-term, big money deal. And Gilmore did play all 16 games last year. Usually when some of these guys who were on the back end of their career, whose accolades came, NFC or the AFC Defensive Player of the Year, it was a few years ago. There have been a couple injuries since then. But he did play 16 games last year. But usually you're overpaying and you're having to promise guaranteed money and extra years and things like that. And I really see this as a very low risk, high reward scenario.
I love that.
And that's what you're looking for in free agency. And guys of that caliber, it usually doesn't happen that way. It's usually the veteran player with all the skins on the wall gets the better end of the deal. But I think this is a very, very good deal done by Cowboys personnel department and the Joneses.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit about what the rest of the division is doing, because everybody joked last year going from the NFC East to the NFC Beast, and I think that this year is shaping up to be very similar. We'll start with the Eagles, who won the division. They were obviously Super Bowl runner-up champions. We joked about Darius Slay. We'll see if he comes back, but you have him back there. You've also got James Bradbury, who re-signed, Boston Scott, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, all really big contributors to that team last season. They did lose a little. They lost Miles Sanders, who went to the Titans, but they did sign Rashad Penny from Seattle to replace that. So they worked in a little bit as well. As far as the Giants are concerned, they signed Darren Waller, which I personally am offended because they're breaking up a marriage. Like, hello, Kelsey Plum. Like, we're going to have to do long distance. Hate that, but obviously, as a tight end, he's incredibly valuable. They have also tagged Saquon Barkley, and they handed Daniel Jones that incredible contract that we talked a little bit about last year. And then from the Commanders' standpoint, they added Jacoby Brissett on a 1-year deal, which I think very similar to Stephon Gilmore, similar low risk. He had a really good year despite Cleveland's record. So that'll be interesting to contend against. They also reached an agreement with Deron Payne. So that's going to be huge for them. 4-year, $90 million. And then they've added an offensive tackle in Andrew Wiley, Nick Gates, and they also brought back Tyler Larson and signed Cody Barton. So the division is making moves. How did last season for you guys really set the tone for the NFC East trying to become a contender again?
Go ahead, Kristi.
Well, the young quarterbacks, that's the main, what you have to look at when you're looking at a division is the quarterbacks and where are they in their careers, and are they on the way up? Are they ascending in their careers? And so Daniel Jones and certainly Jalen Hurts. So the Commanders, until they get it, are they Sam Howell? A lot of people liked him coming out of school, and are they going to be able to let him mature, and are they going to be patient? Are they going to be patient and actually give him a chance, or will they try and make a play for Lamar Jackson? I mean, I don't know, but that's not quite sure what's happening. There's so many moving parts with Washington, and just with everything happening with Daniel Snyder, and So, but. No, I think that you have to look at the quarterbacks. And when you were going, Haley, over the list with the Philadelphia Eagles, and there was one name you mentioned, and the way that they were able to keep Jason Kelsey, their Pro Bowl center, All-Pro, the fact that he decided to return for another year because he's been mulling retirement for a couple years, that is so key.
Yeah.
And then they keep Fletcher Cox on a $10 million deal for another year.
Yes.
And so, two of your mainstay leader guys, but then they'll be able to do like last year, bring in some younger talent. So it looks like they're still going to be able to maintain, having those veteran leaders, the long-term guys, and then infuse. They're not going to be able to infuse with the free agent talent that they did last year.
Yeah.
They're having to shed a lot of their better personnel.
Javon Hargrave.
Well,
to the 49ers
that's
of all
huge.
places.
He was, arguably number 1 or number 2 available free agent at any position. And they've also lost their coaches, with their coordinators. So it's going to be very interesting.
I think it sets the standard for what you're going to see for years to come with the NFC or the NFC East, I should say, because it's a young group. You're seeing young players, and even I was surprised to see Jason Kelce return to the Eagles. I was expecting a retirement announcement, and he's like, "I'm not done yet," and I was like, dang it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure he was going to sober up after, the Eagles lost.
Hits. I mean, the thing about Jason Kelce, though, is he continues to be kind of a thorn in the Cowboys side. He's
great.
And he's
such
so
a great
good.
player.
And the dance moves we got to see,
he's
I love that
Philly.
too.
I mean, he's just one.
That was great.
He's so
it's better
beloved.
than I could probably do.
He is so beloved. That's a thing. It's kind of the heartbeat of that organization for a long time, and just such a favorite of Philly fans, and just one of them. So, I was kind of hoping he would retire and be better for the Cowboys if he had.
All of us would too. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, again, last year I think the standouts were by far the Eagles and then the Cowboys as far as what they were able to do with their roster. But I just feel like, and again, this is my first free agency really to cover from the NFL side, so I feel like it's a little bit more aggressive than years past, but also that might just be my inexperience and jumping into this. But some of these guys, I mean, like Darren Waller, that is
splash.
Again, another guy where you've seen a little bit of a drop off in his game, but he's still Darren Waller. So that'll be interesting too to see just a lot of these teams really showing how competitive this division is, how competitive the conference is. There's been a ton of other moves that we could spin. I literally have like my list that I've been trying to keep of like all of the major moves that are happening. So a lot to keep in mind, but the bottom line, I think, is this is going to be another competitive division. There's still some holes to fill for this Cowboys team, specifically on offense, that, again, we'll kind of watch and wait and see. I know there's a lot of guys available in the draft that will help that as well, that we'll kind of get into a little bit next week. But before we go, we've got a couple minutes here. I know I teased earlier your favorite Ezekiel Elliott moment. It can be off the field. It can be on the field. Someone tweeted me and said his game-winning touchdown against the Steelers. Great memory.
Yes. That was a great
memory.
Yep.
So I'll open it up to you ladies. Favorite Zeke memory that doesn't involve him giving you a ponytail at training camp?
It's got to be jumping in the kettle.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was so fresh. It was so fun. And the reaction to it was all of the thousands and thousands of Cowboy fans, or even non-Cowboy fans, that donated $21 to the Salvation Army Red Kettle for his number 21 after Zeke put $21 after jumping in. So that it was just a sensation, and it was, like I say, completely unexpected.
Yeah.
It was joyful is what it was, and we don't get too many truly joyful moments that carry on and become something on social media. And
it set a standard for the Salvation Army celebrations.
And for a good cause.
Yeah.
I agree.
I remember everybody was upset when he got the fine for the NFL. We were like, no, but
Well, Jerry's like, fine him, give him another fine. Fine him. I was hoping he'd fine him some more.
It's a great Jerry Jones impression.
Because Jerry was going to match it and have all that. So, I mean, they were thinking, we're going to get even more publicity out of this.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the Zeke leap. I mean, you're leaping over a whole man, and it was against the Eagles, which made it so much better. And something I had noticed, when I had first started going in the locker room was I pulled up all of Zeke's stats because they were playing the Eagles for the first time during the season. And I was like, Zeke, you play harder when you play the Eagles. Like, statistically, that is your bread and butter. Like, that is where you're playing your hardest. Why? And he's like, it's the Eagles. Like, and just a very Zeke response to it. But, oh, man, when he leaped over a whole man, oh, my gosh. I remember we all went crazy. Everyone just erupted at that moment. People at home, people in the stadium. I mean, he leaped over an entire man. You guys, that is hard to do. Zeke just leaped over him like nothing. To me, that will forever be the epitome of Zeke Elliott at his absolute best.
I think for me, I mean, there's so many, it's hard to think about. But for me, it was when they put out the commercial of him eating the cereal. And that's where the Feed Zeke thing really kind of took off. And it is a disgusting video, just inherently to watch. I mean, it really is. But that encompassed, I think, who he was in his career, right? This fun-loving, goofy guy who will down a bowl of cereal, no hesitation, gritty, dirty, willing to do that for his team just to kind of show off his personality. So that's whenever I think of Zeke, that's what I think of. But I also think of his touchdown this year against the Texans, that 99-yard drive that he was able to cap off, and just what that meant to the team, what it meant from the standpoint of resiliency and why they made that their word of the year. For him to be the one to put the team ahead, to give them that late go-ahead touchdown score, that's kind of what I will hold on to, is just the epitome of who Zeke is, being there for his team when they need him most, even if it's against a terrible Houston Texans team. So we love Zeke. We will miss Zeke. We are excited to root him on in whatever jersey he wears in the future. But that means that the Cowboys will be building that offense up without him next season. We will, of course, continue to monitor that as free agency continues and the draft kicks off here in just about a month. But that will do it for us on this episode of Girls Talk Boys Talk. Kristi, thank you so much for being with us. We love having your insight on the show. It's always amazing. So phenomenal, the things that you share.
Yeah, thanks for letting me pop in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We will see you guys next week on Girls Talk Boys Talk.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!